Actually Matters. My name is Sami, and hosting the show with me today is Tak, Adam and Samad. Every week, the four of us discuss and debate the hottest topics as requested by our viewers and listeners. Today we'll be talking about Black Lives Matter protests and whether it's plausible that Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense, as he claims, when he shot and killed two protesters in Kenosha. But first, with the Christchurch Mosque shooting verdict out this week, we've invited a special guest, Sami to share his thoughts on the matter. Just under 18 months ago, on 15 March 2019, Brenton Tarrant, a white nationalist, stormed into the Al-Noor Mosque in Christchurch and gunned down 91 worshippers while they were in the middle of Friday prayer, the most holy day of the week for Muslims. This week, Tarrant, who is an Australian, was convicted on 51 counts of murder, 40 counts of attempted murder. And I remember vividly when this attack happened, and a couple of days after this attack, I got a call at like 7 a.m. in the morning from Sami. And so I wanted to bring you on the show with us to share, because you were very, upset by what had happened, as we all were. And but first and foremost, so Sami, thanks for joining Mind Over Matters.
Hey, man, thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Sami. Welcome to the
Thanks,
podcast.
guys.
And I see Tak is, you may notice Tak's video's off. He's probably eating a burrito as we speak. So we'll wait for Tak to finish his burrito. But on a serious note, Sami, I want to take you back to that moment. I got a real, you were living in the United States at the time, halfway across the world, an attack had just occurred. And I think the world was taken aback at what had happened, and I don't think anyone really saw that coming. Your reaction was one that I think many others resonated with many others, and I wanted you to come on the show and share your sentiments or your feelings. What were you doing when you heard about the shooting, and what was your initial reaction?
Yeah. So it was probably 11 o'clock at night for us, and I got one of those pings that you'd get on Al Jazeera, and heard about a Christchurch attack, and the first thing that automatically comes in your mind is, I hope the guy's not brown, right? I hope it's not one of us. You said that it was shocking. It was shocking, but I wouldn't say it was unexpected, right? I mean, Islamophobia has been around and has been rampant since September 11. Whether it's low-level profiling at an airport to the death of 52 people, right? To me, I guess, while shocking and horrific, it wasn't a surprise to me that it led to this. It ended up here, So, I mean, it's a topic that, thank you for bringing me on today. It's a topic that's very close to my heart. I think, you, me, all of us, in the Muslim community, I guess I felt so comfortable in the Muslim community that I kind of forgot my identity. Moving to the States, growing up here, going to university, getting used to, being integrated into the Western culture. There are aspects of my own culture that I forgotten and at times despised, right? So I think an attack such as this brought me back to a place where I felt like I needed to go back and research as to who I am, right? And I felt more Muslim at that point, I would say, than anything else.
Wow, that's very interesting. I think that attack reinforced or made you search for your identity, and now 18 months on, you feel more Muslim than you did then. I think many people probably feel the same way, or many I don't want to use the word lapsed Muslims, but many Muslims who are cultural Muslims, maybe not, maybe brought up in the West, like all of us are, and feel a little bit of a disconnect from our own cultures and our own backgrounds. And I think we all felt that day, and that the days following that, a real sense of identity. And I'm glad you raised that point. So continue, Sami.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I'm just trying to go through the different reactions that you go through on the moment that it happens. And put it this way: we aren't the victims, and we are nowhere in the same position as what the victims' families are going through at the moment. But I think it's fair to say that we, as a community, are also suffering from what's happened. We also feel the sadness. I mean, we saw the trial. We heard the statements that the family members had said, and it brings you down. It brings a sadness into you, as seeing what's happened and what's happening now. Going back to that first day, I think after the initial reaction of I hope this guy wasn't brown, was that where's my dad? It's Friday. He's going to be at prayers too, right? I think, being in Melbourne, it was way too close to home for something like this to happen. This is something you hear
He was
about.
an Australian. Tarrant was an Australian, and
he's an Australian national.
Yeah, and he could have. He chose New Zealand because they didn't have the kind of the gun laws that we have in Australia, for example.
Right.
So he chose New Zealand.
The other reason that he chose New Zealand was specifically just to show that an attack could specifically happen anywhere, even somewhere like New Zealand that hasn't had, literally anywhere. Like the last place that I would have thought would be for a terrorist attack would be New Zealand. Like Australia would have had a far more higher chance than New Zealand, and that's why it was targeted. It was supposed to show that, even if you're in this far off island,
Muslims aren't safe anywhere. If you're not safe in New Zealand, you're not safe anywhere.
Well,
right, yeah, exactly. How about you guys? Sami, you were in Melbourne. I mean, how was it? How was the reaction here in Australia, being so close to New Zealand?
Yeah, my reaction was very similar to yours in many ways. To be honest, the difference was I probably was surprised. My initial reaction was it's probably maybe a Shia Sunni thing, and so when the reports came out that this was a white nationalist terrorist who'd done this attack, I kind of thought, well, actually, it looks like they've escalated. I mean, the white nationalists and white supremacists, we know that they've been planning attacks. Many of them have they've failed, and so this was, I was worried, is more of these attacks going to occur, and I think everyone in Australia felt that way because Tarrant was an Australian. And I know that mosques around Victoria, I don't know what around about the other states, but certainly the mosques in Victoria were under police patrol for I think several weeks after those attacks. Friday prayers had significant police presence, so I think there was the police, at least the perception. The Victorian government, the Australian government, the police here wanted to give a perception that they were protecting the Muslim community in case there was going to be copycat attacks,
which was a serious concern at that time.
We
were anticipating something to happen.
Yeah, it could be anywhere, right? I don't think anyone knew whether at the time whether there was going to be this was a cell, and there was going to be coordinated, attacks thereafter, or copycats. Copycats tend to see this and and be inspired by it.
Especially when you carry a manifesto, I think that really, makes you, a prime example for all these, closet racists and white supremacists, Islamophobes. You're giving them almost like a guideline on how to go about it. And if they see it happen once, they want to replicate it or even try to, outdo it. So, yeah, I do remember there was a lot of, security and was trying to do their best to protect the mosque or any, religious centers.
Yeah.
Across Victoria,
yeah. I wanted to ask our viewers, some of them who are Muslim, how you felt. So please, send us a chat. Tell us what you were feeling. How do you feel now? Is there a sense of closure? And this is also a question to our panelists. Do we feel a sense of closure after the verdict this week, or is it just some a respite until possibly the next attack? Do we still feel like this is the attack by white nationalists, white supremacist groups, these let's say far right patriot organizations, that do we still feel that threat is imminent?
In terms of like you talking about closure, I guess I got my closure through a different sort of source, which was at the time when I was working. I remember serving customers here and there, and I don't like to get political at work just because a part of most of the people who do come through my workplace aren't the most they aren't the most thought out when it comes to their opinions. I've heard some really hot takes from these people, so I don't like to talk to them about politics. But around that time, I was just so overcome with emotion and feeling like the rest of you guys that I just couldn't help but talk about it. And most people share the same sentiments that we had. There weren't many Muslims that talked to me about it. Sometimes it was actual people from New Zealand, the Maori people, New Zealand, people who are born in New Zealand, they would reach out to me and be like, are you okay? How do you feel about it? So that kind of gave me a sense of closure and made me realize that it's not a majority of people that are that think this way or think this was a good thing. Most people are very ashamed of, what happened.
Yeah, and I think you raised a very interesting point here, is colleagues, co-workers and friends. How did they, I mean, if you are visibly Muslim, or, your friends, colleagues know that you're Muslim, did any of them, try and reach out, offer their, support? And if they didn't, is that because of a sense of, shame that they may have felt about the actions of this person? Or, I don't know, it's, social media is probably not the right way to engage on topics like this, but did you guys get calls from friends, colleagues after this happened?
Personally, no.
No?
I'm in general not a big calling person. I don't know if that's just a product of when I was born, and I had people tell me oh yeah, hey man, sorry to hear all that, and to be fair, I don't really see
expect
people
that.
in, well, no, not necessarily expect that. I mean, generally when something bad happens, the general response from people is support, right?
Are you okay?
Yeah, right. Now, I don't, you see, my problem is that I feel bad for a lot of people who might feel responsible for something that they're not kind of directly responsible for, but that being said, having the sentiment of people show support is always a good thing, right? And I think obviously people condemn attacks of, well, this is a terrorist attack, that's what it is, right? Because definitionally terrorist attacks are incitements of political violence.
Yeah.
And ultimately a lot of people can now as Sam was saying, it's usually oh god, I hope it's not someone who's brown, right? And there's a reason for that, and subsequently this is something that I guess, like I said earlier, like people weren't expecting it to happen in New Zealand of all places, and now that's like resulting in a ripple effect across the world. Now, I don't know if it necessarily, like, to answer one of your questions that you asked earlier, Simon, about whether there's closure. I think there is closure in the fact that the guy is getting a what is it, like a life sentence, no parole thing. I don't know. I feel like he wasn't gonna get out of that one in any way.
Yeah.
This is gonna obviously, like, I don't know. It like that's gonna be the more
this is the
crazy
first time
story.
first time that someone's been locked up for life without parole. So he's the
New
first,
Zealand,
in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So,
But I think he sets a precedent, right? Like that's the problem. Like, sorry, not the problem. Like that's that's the reason. It's not too surprising, I think, because we actually did get a question in regards to the New Zealand shooting, and I was looking up like shootings in America as well, and I don't know if you guys remember the Aurora theater shooting, and that was like that was during like the Dark Knight, and that guy, well, I had it up earlier, but I think like the dude got a life sentence for that too, and he was also sentenced for like an additional like couple of years for every person he killed as well, like just like as a statement, like you're having a life sentence and then you're getting like an extra 3,000 years like on top of like how many people you got killed. So people like that, people who mass kill people, I think as a society we denounce and we don't support, right? And whether or not there is going to be future problems with I guess like white nationalist terrorist attacks is going to be purely dependent on whether or not these groups continue to still feel I guess justified in their actions. If you read his manifesto, he goes into the reasons why he committed these attacks, and I don't know, like unfortunately
not just he also, don't forget that he was live streaming the whole.
Yeah, I think that was really important too. Someone mentioned it earlier. I forget who else. I think that's also another reason why it was quite intense for a lot of people.
I mean, the other thing about it is I think the biggest bit of closure from this whole situation is that his plan failed, because his plan was to radicalize the alt-right, to radicalize the white supremacists. Maybe they are radicalized, but I feel like the two.
I don't think his plan failed. I think he was successful at what he was trying to do.
I don't know. I feel like I think it's successful in the sense that the people who are like in between, like they didn't know. The alt-right, maybe they're more radicalized, but the people who are in between, I feel like they have kind of shifted away from that kind of sentiment after seeing like the destruction, seeing what's been going on.
I just want
to distinguish between alt-right here and white supremacists, white nationalists, because they're often not the same group. So alt-right,
that's actually is actually a good.
So I think many alt-right groups would have condemned these attacks as well. White nationalists, however, did not, and one of the things I think Adam, you mentioned about this doesn't mean that he's been unsuccessful.
No,
to be honest,
I think he was successful.
He's demonstrated that a lone wolf, that a person acting alone, can cause
with the right equipment and the right information.
He planned this 2 years. Again, it's in his manifesto. He planned this attack 2 years in advance, right? And he even mentioned that the term specifically, I want to say it's like I think it either happened in Sweden. There was a terrorist attack there, which killed. Oh, sorry about that, guys. There was a terrorist attack over there that killed a young girl. Her name was like Eba or something, and she was killed by like in an Islamic terrorist attack, and that was one of the turning points for him to start targeting like Muslim minorities wherever he at the time. It was like a planning phase thing, but they became his target, and that was
it was one of his many reasons provided in his manifesto, and I mean, to be honest, his manifesto is not very sophisticated. It's poorly written, grammatical mistakes.
I mean, I didn't really expect Mein Kampf out of it.
It's not an intellectual literature piece, right? Like it is.
But I think there's a big mistake in discounting the things in the manifesto, though. Like, if you don't, like even if it's poorly written, there is clear issues within the manifesto, which is the cause of why he committed these attacks. And if they're not addressed in any capacity, it is gonna result in more people committing attacks in the future, which is what I'm concerned with.
So his main. So I want to tie this back to your identity point, Sami. Is you said that this attack on Muslims gave you a renewed sense of identity, of a renewed sense of Muslim identity and Muslim connection. And I think if you look at some of these white nationalists, they probably have the same sentiment, that when there's Islamist attacks, right?
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was laughing at something in the chat.
When there's Islamist attacks in the West, they see that as a renewed sense of identity, of white identity for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point that out, is that it kind of does cut both ways in that sense, that, you know, what we experience, you know, it's not unique to us. It's others can experience that renewed sense of identity when they feel, you know, under attack, and whether that, you know, that is real or imagined attack, they feel it nonetheless. I do want to touch on it, and I don't want to get into too much about the manifesto because it's gobbledygook and it's horrible. Don't read it. But his.
I mean, look. I'm gonna say don't necessarily read it if you want to understand. Like it's the same reason why people read Mein Kampf, right? If you want to understand ideologies that you disagree with, you should at least attempt to try and understand. You don't have to agree. Educating yourself about your political or even political enemies is a good idea. And I don't think it's illegal to read in Australia. It is illegal in New Zealand from my understanding. Actually, just as a side point, somebody, Hiba asked in the chat, do you guys think he deserved capital punishment if it was legal in New Zealand? I don't actually know. I don't know our positions on capital punishment.
Oh, that's a question of morality, though. It's a moral question. Right?
Well, welcome to the Mind Over Matter podcast, where we ask tricky questions.
Before we pivot to the moral conundrum that might be capital punishment, I just wanted to end this on about some of the reasons that Tarrant provided, so that I think our audience better understands, and maybe we understand. But there's a concept known as the Great Replacement or White Extinction, and they believe that immigrants, and it's not just Muslims. So the attack was on Muslims, and he provides an interesting rationality behind that. But their issue is not just with Muslims. The issue is with all non-white
Western countries,
immigrants
in
Western predominantly or former Christian nation states, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't think he identifies as Christian though. So I don't know if that's necessarily
he identifies he identifies that as a means to an end though. So that's why I'm tentative. He's not necessarily Christian as a orthodox believing Christian, but he's Christian with the historical relevance of Christianity, right? The history of Christianity.
I think it's more Christianity because, typically Christians are white. So
it's the historical conquest of Christianity and the history behind it.
Well, of whites, not
of course.
Christian.
I don't think he cares so much about Coptic Christians, right?
Well, I think there's a big distinction when it comes to that. But anyway, sorry, continue.
So that white extinction, the logic follows that immigrants, non-white immigrants into the West is is acting as a catalyst to the extinction of white people in the West due to the fact that immigrants, outpace in terms of
birth rates.
Birth rates.
Because
reason.
So just to kind of give the I guess our audience a bit of an understanding. So in terms of birth rates, refers to how many births per person per woman, right? Happens on average in a country, and in order to have what's referred to as replacement birth rates is 2.1, which is for every mother you have 2 kids, and it's 0.1 because it's just supposed to be like slightly over, and there's going to be people who are like 1.9, right?
Keep the population growing, you need to have exactly above 2. Otherwise, for the mother and father, if they die, if you don't have at least a slightly more like a 0.1 to replace it, then the birth rates diminish.
Sometimes I feel like I'm the 0.9 in the 1.9 in my family, but no. In most Western countries, there is a big problem with what's known as sub-replacement rates, where most Western countries, I think we're even having a problem in Bangladesh too, where it's like, I think it's 2.1 or 2.2 for our replacement birth rates in Bangladesh, but I'd have to relook at that. But anyway, so the supplementation of low birth rates is usually through immigration, and so the argument is that we're getting people from outside, so immigration from outside, in order to contest the low birth rate replacement rates here.
Of whites, yeah.
I mean, domestic. It doesn't necessarily have to be white. So, the problem here is that typically when you look at birth rates in countries, people who integrate tend to start lowering their birth rates. If you look
I'm glad you raised that.
If you look at America in particular, like if you look at like whites, I think I'd have to, sorry audience, I usually have these stats off my head, but it's usually like 1.4 for whites.
You know what we expect of you, mate. Next,
it's usually 1.4 for whites, but like if you compare it to African Americans and Latino communities, like they used to be over 2, but now they've gone much lower compared to where they were 10 years ago. And again, that is, I think, more of shifting over from I think access to resources, which is what happens when you move over from a low resource maybe country or region to a high resource region. Is you start to get into
the nuances you're talking about here, a lot of the white nationalists, they gloss over because it doesn't help their cause, right? So their cause is they want to show, that the white population will be, will be replaced by the birth rates of.
But the problem here is it's not necessarily. It is a hypothetical thing that could happen, right? You can't. And this is the thing. In order to engage in this conversation with these ideas, you have to at least have the conversation. And the problem is that people will not want to engage and will not want to target these topics because it's either too controversial and we're not against talking about spicy content. So it's not a problem for us. But in terms of like the public sphere, talking about these things could potentially be like political or career suicide, right? So it's and I don't blame people for not wanting to touch the topic with anything but a 6-foot pole. But I think personally, if we want to at least attempt to try and prevent future attacks or prevent de-radicalization, I think it has to be something where conversations about these things have to be
I completely disagree on that. I don't think you can rationalize. So the mind of people like Tarrant and white nationalists is they look for they look
Looking
for
for
reasons to
but
reinforce their
but also
beliefs.
you also have to look at the general population as well, because the general population, like, I mean, look at all the stuff that is happening because of COVID-19. People have suddenly become like scientists, even though they're all soccer mums and like construction workers.
HCQ, man, HCQ solves it all.
Well, yeah. But HCQ is another problem as well, because it may be a potential solution, but it's not some kind of what is it, like panacea that.
Sorry, I want to kind of just bring us back in, so we don't pivot to COVID-19. But I think I don't think you can argue or rationalize, come up with
but the general population also doesn't know about these issues either.
The nuances. And so just to close on that point though, what you find, and not just in Australia, but all developed Western countries, is that generally the first generation immigrants do have a high birth rate. After when they're into their second generation, that birth rate lowers, and usually by third generation, the numbers are pretty much the same as the rest of the average of the country.
And I think that's a problem. I think that's a big problem. There needs to be some kind of research or discussion going into how we can solve the problem of low birth rates in Western countries. Forever.
Well, the problem is. The problem is
lifestyle.
It's low birth rates in Western countries.
Yeah, it is lifestyle. But other countries, European countries, for example, give I forget where it was. I think it was Berlin, or Berlin isn't a European country, but you know what I'm trying to say, where they give tax exemptions if you have 4 kids, for example. That's an example of as a potential solution. Now, not everybody can pop out 4 kids. I know I can't. Make anybody else.
Yeah, you're not working hard enough, Adam.
Pop out 4 kids either, but there needs to be. Well, yeah, I'll try and get back to you. What's that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger where he's where he has to give kindergarten, where he's pregnant?
Yeah.
Come on.
I can't remember, but I'm
expecting Sami to know. I'm expecting Sami to know of all people.
I know which one you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it.
Well, I'll work on it. I promise. But yeah. Just to kind of round it off, I just meant to say that, it is something that is a problem in Western countries, and it needs to probably be addressed at some time. Otherwise, you are going to have people who continue to use this as a point of reference.
But Adam, even if the Western governments incentivize white people to have more children.
It doesn't have to be white people.
I'm being facetious here.
The problem is this is a problem that's happening in Bangladesh.
No, but let me just finish my point here. Even if the government were to incentivize having more children, right? These white nationalists would still say, even if they're having now 2.4 children. The first generation immigrants are still having 2.5 children. So in 1,000 years, they're going to replace us.
But at least you'd be able to dismantle that as a weapon that they'd use. They'll
just pivot to something else.
If it's not this, it'll be another.
That's fine. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You let them pivot until they can't pivot anywhere else.
They'll manipulate the data, mate.
They will do.
Low birth rates isn't a manipulation of any data.
But guys,
Adam.
Sorry, Sami,
just one sec. Sami, you go first. Sorry. You're the guest. Take it away.
Oh, thanks, guys. No, look, I just wanted to say one thing.
Look, you've had enough time, Sami. No, I'm kidding.
And look, at the end of the day, we are all just empty vessels who are just fed propaganda from different areas of life, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be one bunch of people who are going to be driven by whatever they hear, whatever they read and whatnot, and that will drive them to one extreme. And there's going to be another type of people who's going to be driven to another extreme. Now, on one side, you've got ISIS. On the other side, you've got these white nationalists. At the end of the day, it's really up to leadership, right? To come up with some sort of a how do we get to a point where we stop entertaining this stuff, right? How do we get to a point where we get a government where they we don't rely on people's fears and polarization of society that ends up resulting in people like the terrorist in New Zealand and ISIS on the other side.
How do we bridge the gap?
How do we bridge that gap? We are currently in a place. We are currently in a place where I think, I mean, especially in America, where I spent most of my time over the last 8 years, your political affiliation is just as strong as your religious affiliation, if that makes sense. How do we stop that? Where is leadership? Like, where are our leaders coming out and saying, and it's not being apologetic, really just coming back and saying, hang on, guys, this is not on.
Yeah.
you can't go around killing people like this. This is not right, right? And I think it needs to come from all sides. It needs to come from our side, stopping the people who are doing what they're doing, and I think it also needs to come from the other side. I don't know what the other side is.
Are you saying, when you say kind of the your side, are you saying that the radicalization within the Islamic community, and how do we put an end to that?
How do we curb that?
And then at the same time, how do because that's kind of our problem to solve, or that's the problem to solve of Muslims, because it's it's radicalization within their own community. And how do you stop the radicalization of young white males as well? And their community needs to tackle that issue. And I
don't know what that community is, but at a leadership level,
those leaders of those communities need to be working out ways to bridge that gap.
And I don't know whose responsibility it is, but I think, okay, let's talk about so coming from the Muslim community, on the Muslim side, I think we've been far more apologetic of being Muslim over the last couple of years than we have been of anything otherwise, right? It's not, we need to integrate, we need to forget who we are, and we need to integrate and be more Australian. Where are these people who are trying to integrate representing us at moments like this in terms of what's happened in New Zealand? And similarly, where are the leaders, the government, in Trump, in America, we look at Trump, where are the leaders when white nationalists go out and do the exact same thing, right? I mean, and I know I'm sort of segueing into something else, but I mean, with the riots, the protests and the killings that are happening in America at the moment, right? There's
a lack of leadership there as well. Yeah,
correct. It's been egged on by. It's not just a lack of leadership. It's been pushed.
Non-existent.
It's being pushed by. Right.
It's being exacerbated. Like
definitely. In the US, definitely. It's an understatement.
It's almost like it's a battlefield. It's like a proxy battlefield.
Actually, before we continue, I do want to actually bring it back to that question that was asked about capital punishment, because I do actually want to know people's position here.
Can of worms here.
That's it.
About now, just to kind of bring up the question again, do you guys think which is referred to Tarrant, deserved capital punishment if it was legal in New Zealand?
Who wants to take this?
I'll
take it. I don't support capital punishment, so I mean.
All right. Yep.
I'm not. Then again, I'm not a big fan. Then again, I'll put a tacit bit of modifier.
You've had your chance, buddy.
I'm not a big fan of wasting state resources keeping these people alive necessarily, or using chemicals to put them. Nor am I interested in the thousands of dollars worth of chemicals that usually get used to put them down either.
In the US, when they do lethal injection, it's 3 injections, and each injection is worth $5,000.
Yeah, and it's bizarre to me. And
so you're spending $15,000 to kill someone.
So it's
just get the Russians to poison them. I don't
just chop their heads off like they do in Saudi Arabia.
So that's where it comes down to, because for me it's if you quote unquote put them out of their misery, it takes away less state resources that could be applied somewhere else. But then there's also the moral question. I'm against capital.
So are you against it from a moral perspective, or are you against it from a legal economic perspective?
No, morally. I don't.
Morally, okay.
I don't think people.
I think Sami, I think we know your position, which is let's do what
down.
Saudi Arabia does.
No, it's actually the complete opposite. I mean, we can't stoop to. I mean, that's morally speaking, we can't stoop to that level, right? I mean, an eye for an eye is not the answer. So let him suffer in jail for the rest of his life. Let him rot there. Let him live in silence.
Throw away the key.
Just throw away the key. Exactly.
Like anyone who's seen American History X, they know like he should be in prison.
Yeah,
just let him be in prison.
I'll take care of it.
I think putting such people, and also one thing that I feel is that if they were to give him capital punishment, if anything, that will just make him. It will be more sense. Yeah, it will make him a martyr
make him a political like a figurehead.
Yeah, they'll be like he died for their struggle. So
yeah. He died.
What about you?
I have two perspectives here.
Oh, here we go.
One is I think capital punishment is not compatible with Western liberalism and progressive ideology of Western liberalism. So I don't think you can claim to be a progressive as defined as part of the Western liberal ethos. You can't have that and also have capital punishment. They're incompatible, which is why most Western liberal countries got rid of it in the first place. So that's my first perspective. From a moral standpoint, I'm not completely morally opposed to it.
Yeah.
So it was like the Dark Knight thing, you're not gonna kill him, but you're not gonna save him either. Is that what you're telling me?
Look, I don't control the system under which I live. So Western liberal progressiveness is what we live under. I can't change that. So I don't think those two things are compatible. But morally, I'm not necessarily opposed to the capital punishment.
How would you do it? How would you do it?
How would you do it?
How would you do it?
Mate, now you're going to a level deeper.
Yeah, let's not get into hypotheticals.
Look, we've run out of time.
Anyway, let's move on.
There's one more thing that I wanted to talk about was the people. There's particular people who are very famous on the internet for inciting hate. Who
are they? Name and shame, buddy.
Ben Shapiro.
Well, Ben Shapiro. Take it away. There you go. Ben Shapiro.
He should get capital punishment.
He's named and shamed. Oh, goodness.
Yeah. He was on it. He was on the manifesto.
TAC destroys Ben Shapiro.
I mean, but that's the problem. The shooter also mentioned PewDiePie, and people got mad that he said subscribe to PewDiePie.
But he has to post an apology for that. He had nothing to do with the whole situation. The dude just happened to be a PewDiePie fan.
And also, it was a time when everyone was putting that up because they wanted to be TC.
Yeah, they just want to be.
I think that was a different thing. But when it comes to Ben Shapiro, he's openly
he was actually
referenced.
referenced.
But
he's Harvard cited.
So was Candace. So was Candace. What's her name?
Candace Owens.
Yeah. So was Candace Owens.
Yeah, but
he joked about, and he even joked about it in the actual manifesto about how she was more extremist than him, like as a joke. Like this is the thing. He in that whole manifesto is one big meme for the most part. There's obviously the stuff which is the white nationalist replacement theory part, but then there's also the aspect of it where he's literally just trying to talk.
But Adam, the point that I'm trying to make is for someone like Ben Shapiro, who constantly comes out and makes Muslims sound like they're savages who are destroying things while the Israelis are the only ones building things.
I'm sure.
So when they're pushing that,
he actually
pushes that kind of narrative,
how
and that's not even a joke.
Islam is the end of Western civilization.
Yeah,
like he makes it a point.
So it's not even.
Wait. I think Sam's trying to say something, but hey, Sam, you're low.
Your audio's
your audio just went down.
Yeah.
Bump it up a bit low.
How's that?
Oh, now you're off. Now we can't hear you, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Oh no, he can still listen.
What happened there?
Technical difficulties.
Audio back?
It's still a bit low.
Still a bit low, yeah.
Look, it's not a podcast if we don't have a little bit of technical difficulties. The chat will know that. The chat knows what's up. Real ones will know what's up.
What have I done?
Real ones. Day ones, no.
Day one's there. Still low. My
Still a
dude.
bit low, yeah.
Maybe turn up your headphones.
Hey, I'm looking out for the chat. I don't want the chat to raise their headphones. But no, you sound better now.
Okay, that's good. I don't know what happened there. Hopefully
Still a
it's
bit
better.
low, bud.
It's still a bit
We'll
low,
figure it
yeah.
out.
Is it cranked up?
It to full crank? No, halfway
Okay.
crank.
Halfway crank. We'll figure it out. Sorry, go on.
So just going back to what you were saying about Ben Shapiro. So how do you control that then? I mean, we've got the same.
Don't give these people a platform.
Who, Ben Shapiro?
Why is this? Why does he
Like
have
Ben
the kind of
Ben-
respect that he does? That's my question, and that kind of shows how many people are agreeing with what he has to say.
And
That's the narrative he's constantly pushing, right?
I guess that links back to like even what was happening in Australia pre the Christchurch attacks. Like we've seen the resurgence of One Nation Party and parties alike before the attacks. So, like Channel 7 themselves gave, what's her name? The redhead chick.
Pauline Hanson.
Pauline Hanson.
They gave her a platform to speak her shit. And then, that kind of brought about the resurgence of the One Nation Party. Not like one-to-one, but it kind of like built up to it. Yeah. Yeah, no, I can hear you, yeah. We have to deplatform these people.
Oh, you're sounding great, by the way.
Sounding good, yeah.
Yeah,
He's back now.
Yes, he's back. He's back, chat.
The chat is saying they can't hear you, but we can hear you.
Oh,
that's weird.
Chat can't hear Simon. Again,
Technical
not a big loss. Not a big loss. Just putting it out there, but
maybe try put it at that level before. Like we won't hear you as much.
Yeah, we won't hear you, but
as long as the chat can hear you.
Yeah. Chat's number one. All right,
Priority.
Chat's always number one here. Need subtitles. That's true. Maybe we need to.
Yeah.
It's not going to be in English though,
Captions.
chat. We'll put it in something else. Put it in Russian or something.
Try speaking now. We can hear you clearly, but the
We
chat
can hear you, but
can't. Maybe take your thing out.
yeah, take the bing bong out.
Take...
I love the instructions. No, it's still not working. All right,
just take the mic out and then plug it back in.
I can filibuster in the meantime, right?
How about now? Is my audio? Am I audible?
We can hear you, but we just wait for the chat.
Chat, if you can hear me, please let me know.
Just take him out.
Just take him out.
Okay, I think they can hear now. Yeah.
Good. So where were we? Pauline Hanson. She's a racist. Yes. I think we've established that. And
not just Pauline Hanson. Do you see how much of a platform that what's his name? Ainsley, I think.
Fraser
Harriet?
Fraser Anning.
Fraser Anning. The
guy got egged.
Yeah, the guy who got egged.
Yeah.
He got a platform like right after the attacks, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. He got egged for the attacks, isn't it?
Yeah, because he was. I mean, he started with that. He started with that letter, and then that's when people were like mad. Like, how can he talk like this about a tragedy? And then he did like some speech in public, and that kid egged him, and he became a national hero, rightly so.
The egg boy became a national hero.
Boy, yeah. So, it's just like Australia's just let these people run rampant with, their
and they still do
racist rhetoric, and they don't hold them to a larger, I guess, standard, or like they don't hold them accountable.
I think I want to draw a distinction here because Pauline Hanson, her platform originally was given to her as just a Dancing with the Stars person, which I think was a mistake. Why would you have a known racist as
it sounds like bad optics.
But then that gave her the following to then rekindle her political career, and then back to One Nation. But once you're an elected member of Parliament, you have a platform. I mean, you can't not give them a platform a platform to an elected member of parliament. The same with Fraser Anning. As much of a racist as he is, do we say that the media should decide who who to interview or not interview, or who to give a platform or not to give a platform when they're within the Australian Parliament? Like, I don't think you can do that. You can say individuals like racist individuals down the street, yeah, definitely don't give them a platform. But I don't think you can tell the media not to give a platform to members of Parliament.
And I think it's a fine line too, right? It's I mean, the whole issue of freedom of speech comes into it.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have freedom of speech here in Australia.
We don't have that here, which is good. Yeah. Let's keep it that way, guys.
No, I mean, it all comes down to that. I don't know what I was going to say now. Keep going.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. But I think what you were saying, Sam, is like the question comes down to like whether we platform people like this is a freedom of speech issue.
Right. I mean, essentially what Tam was saying, right? What Tam was saying earlier, these are elected members of parliament. How did they get there in the first place? These are elected members of parliament. You can't stop them from saying what they want to say.
And they represent the voices of the people that elected them, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's kind of like silencing them is also silencing the people who voted for
people.
them. And so, we I don't know whether the strategy of exposing them as racists are going to let the people who voted them, are they going to say, oh, I didn't realize he was a racist? I mean, maybe that's why they voted for him.
Yeah, exactly.
I look, personally, I'd rather these people be open about their beliefs, because then it exposes them to
they are.
We wouldn't get things like Egg Boy, if we didn't have these people being exposed for the stuff that they say, whether good or bad. And I think it does lead to a potentially slippery slope if you start deplatforming certain people, regardless of what, depending on what they say, I guess.
I'm totally comfortable with deplatforming non-members of parliament who are racist and overtly racist.
Yeah,
they'll still find their audience somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we're not incarcerating them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're not incarcerating.
But I think, one of the things that Sami mentioned earlier was, what are the leaders doing from our community? People who have the voice, who have the platform. Going to throw it back on Sami. What do you think they should be doing?
See, that's a good question.
That's what I want to hear.
And you're not the first person who's asked me that question. My response to that would be, them being the leaders should be making those decisions. It's not my job to give you an answer in terms of what their voice should be.
And so what if you were in that position?
I don't claim to be. I'm not going to be the leader.
If we elected you as
because the way that I see it is, if we're not seeing the results,
campaign, by the way,
maybe it's our time to stand up, right? Like, how long are we going to wait for others to do the job?
Especially when they've continuously failed at doing it.
Yeah, nothing's stopping us.
Welcome to being a politician, to be fair.
And we see this not in this country. We see it overseas. We see how how easily we turn our blind eye. We've seen what's happening in China, and all the neighboring Muslim countries are still signing deals with China. So, and as soon as they're asked about what's happening there, they turn a blind eye. They act like they have no idea what's happening at all. Have no information whatsoever. And that's the kind of behavior that we see in the local community. When it comes to, let's say, radicalisation, it's a very sensitive topic, but there are still cases. There are little pockets of people. Maybe they're doing it in hiding. Maybe they're not so smart about it, but people still find out. And what are we doing? On what should you reckon we should do? Maybe, let's say, on an individual level, to, I guess, force these leadership people who are in leadership, to really do the right thing. Because how long are we going to do this? How long are we going to go back and forth, talk about these issues, and we're still going to be in the same spot
and expect a different outcome with the same people?
It's just going to be insanity by the end of it.
Yeah,
I think it's mainly because people are scared of losing their platform, or they have their hands in so many different things. They're scared of losing their deals. Like, an example I'll give you is one, like, no, he's not a leader, but Muslim celebrity, Mesut Ozil, who plays for Arsenal. He's a central midfielder. He posted something about the Chinese concentration camps and how they're treating the Uyghur people, and pretty much he hasn't played a game for Arsenal since.
And he's sticking to his comments as well, which is
like
good to see.
People, it's so bad that there are games where they literally need him. He's their highest player. It's not like some C-list player. He's their highest paid player in the club. And as soon as he spoke out about it, because they have Chinese investors, the orders came from higher up that he can't play anymore. So now he's having to look for a new club. So that, I think people are just afraid that might happen to them. I mean, it's not. It's a slippery slope. But that isn't a reality for a lot of people as well, as to why they're not speaking up about this stuff.
That's a very good point. I mean, that's what happened to Kaepernick, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, Kaepernick was lucky that Nike took that and turned it into a campaign.
I think over a year later though, right? Took a while for that.
It did take a while, and he didn't get selected by any of the NFL teams. He was out for a whole year, but. Yeah, he's making hella deals from Nike. He's become a political icon. So, and I think that wouldn't be the case if it was someone who spoke out against China.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think in America he became a political icon because there is that ability to express your opinions, and people have different opinions. Whereas in China, you don't have that ability.
It's a CCP opinion.
You have one opinion.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're monitored, and I think they're also monitoring or trying to get monitoring systems within video games as well. So you got to be careful what you type, even when you're saying LOL. Just saying you can't mince words anymore in China.
No Winnie the Pooh as well.
Yeah,
definitely no Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. If we do expect more from our leaders, I think we should hold them to account for where we see them failing.
Right.
And maybe you should raise the bar. But if we expect a different outcome from our leaders when they're applying the same tactics and it's the same people, then maybe we need to do something about it, right? But on the question of radicalisation within the Islamic community, at least within Australia, I think largely there might be pockets of that, but I think the community's done a pretty good job at curbing that radicalisation, and so on now it's the concern, the bigger graver concern is this growing white nationalist movement and the threat that poses not just in Australia but in the United States and in other parts of Europe.
I don't know. I mean, it's naturally going to be a point of contention because I think because there was a Dayton shooting which was inspired by the El Paso shooting in 2019 as well. That was something. I think the El Paso shooting was a white nationalist or right wing terrorist attack, and then the Dayton shooting was a far leftist committing a mass shooting as well. I think these problems exist in America just because of just the advent of things like guns.
The advent of guns.
Well, not the advent, the existence. Sorry,
the
existence.
The availability.
Availability, but and I think the biggest terrorist attack at the moment in the U.S. was the Orlando shooting, right? So I don't think it's
Was it that, or was it the Las Vegas shooting?
Now the Mandalay Bay shooting did have more people killed, but there wasn't a political no. There wasn't a motive assigned to it. They still don't know.
They don't know what he did, why he did it.
Why he did it. And to be fair, and subsequently it had
guns, man.
Dude was I think
decked out.
How they had I think high rollers in America, right? They have private elevators and all that kind of stuff, and it's believed that he was able to smuggle his weaponry using these private elevators because all the high rollers had access to it, and so that's how he got it.
The high rollers don't travel in the same elevators as the plebs.
Yeah, we get dumb
because
waiters.
they get robbed, mate.
But yeah, so what? Yeah, yes, you're right, Sammy. Because again, I was looking them up just to see like what's the seriously. There were more people killed during the Mandalay Bay shooting, but there isn't a political or motive that's unfortunately ascribed to it, even after the investigations.
I was going to say he's an accountant. That's all we know.
Yeah, was he an accountant?
Even his
they're going to watch out for those accountants.
Even his brother was like absolutely bizarre as well. Like, like the whole family seems to be like a bit of weirdos. So I don't know. It could be, but like I think the rise of just like attacks everywhere is going to lead to these kind of quote unquote retaliatory attacks as well in Western countries. So I think it's going to be on the rise just because naturally there are more and more terrorist attacks happening and it is being normalized. Hopefully we can do more to try and prevent it. And you do that by having discussions like we are having on the Mind Over Matters podcast. Always check us out on
check us out.
Like and subscribe, all that bell icon, bing bang bong. Right? Bing.
Bing bang bong.
Are we? Let's move on to our next topic for the evening.
Yes.
And so, Sammy, you're welcome to stay for the topic, or we want to move on.
Why are you trying to kick?
Yeah, why are
you trying to get rid of me? I'm staying. What are you talking about?
Make yourself comfortable because we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter and the Kenosha riots and the Kyle. Whether there's I'm sure you may have all heard about the shooting and of two protesters. Three people were shot. Two died. Fatally.
Two died, yeah.
And this was the shooter was a 17-year-old by the name of Kyle Rittenhouse. He's claiming self-defense.
By the way, he wasn't a local resident. That's also something too.
I think he was just across. I think it was only just across state lines. It wasn't like he was like.
I mean, he's still not living there, right? Like, because
I think the thing is he was asked to protect property in Kenosha. That's the reason why he was there.
With an illegal firearm, isn't it?
I don't. See, here's the problem with. So I think within our private chats, I mentioned it. Because I think
juicy private chats.
Juicy. You can only get access to it through our OnlyFans. No, we're working on it. Bella Hadid, she ruined her OnlyFans for everyone. Not Bella Hadid, who Bella Thorne. But no, with how it is, I think in Kenosha, and I guess the state in general, I think open carry is only allowed for if you're 18 and over, but there is laws in place that you're allowed like long guns if you're like hunting. Now the problem is he wasn't hunting, so
I think he was hunting.
I think he was out hunting, man.
I don't know. I think that's going to be very hard to prove.
He's 17 years old. I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt. And I think the circumstances surrounding what happened.
Yeah, there was a really good. I think New York Times did a timeline of the events, looking at like the videos that happened before and during the shooting, and I don't know. I personally think that from the evidence presented so far, there's obviously more that might come out over the next couple of weeks because it's currently. I think he has. I think that and correct me if I'm wrong. They've charged him with first-degree murder.
Yeah, first-degree homicide on 2 accounts, and then they've charged him with possession of illegal firearms because he's under the age of 18. I think there's 6 charges in total. So he's in a lot of trouble for his 17-year-old.
I think in. Oh, sorry. Go.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
No, I was going to say how interesting. I just wanted to add one bit. Is how interesting is it that he got to walk home?
Yeah.
He walked straight past the police.
Well, he did. Well, here's the problem though. He did technically give himself up to police, and then the police didn't take him, right? Like that's
still part of the problem, right? That's the reason why.
But I don't think that's. But I don't think that's his fault, though.
No, it's not his fault.
I want to make the distinction there.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons why there are riots
Well, he was
in the first
technically
place.
working with the police as well, from my understanding.
Before the shooting, he was
because
helping them remove graffiti from some of the buildings.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think
that I watched the footage of that, Sami, and I was flabbergasted. That someone open carrying in a state in which open carry is not permitted, and then after the shooting, he did have, to be fair, he had his hands up, as the kind of police cavalcade, right, was rolling down the street, and they just went straight past him, and then he was able to go all the way home, and then turned himself into the police.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat just quickly asked, "What state is Sami from?"
I'm from in the States.
In the US.
I think that's what they meant.
In DC. So I was in Washington DC.
He's very well known in the Washington DC state.
Yeah.
What's the local baseball team called?
The Nats, the Nationals.
I'm just gonna believe you because I don't know.
No, it is. We have the Wizards and the Nats and the Capitals. NFL? Well, it's controversial. Redskins.
Oh, true. Yes. Redskins. They are getting the rename, aren't they? When's that coming through?
Yeah,
that's coming through very soon. I think they just called
I think there's like a placeholder name, which they're also just kind of, which I think is an excellent marketing.
They're going to change it
to. So much
clever.
Yeah. Someone in the chat said Washington football team. I think that's what it was.
And
that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. That's its like placeholder name until the like new name comes in, which basically makes it limited time merch.
Yeah. The funny thing is there was a lot of pressure previous to the whole, the protests that have been happening. I mean, there's been a lot of pressure on that NFL team to change their name for many years, and nothing's happened. And it's you feel that change in the air. You're being there, you feel that change in the air, that things are sort of, I guess, progressing to somewhat of a better place. But we'll see what happens. I mean, Trump's still in power.
Do you think it's progressing to a better place?
Yeah, they could come up with a more racist name. Just saying.
Well, I think there's a lot. I mean, from a 40,000 foot perspective, I'm seeing Black Lives Matter in international sports. In cricket. I was watching a game the other day, and that sponsored. Well, I had a Black Lives Matter logo on it, and that's unheard of. So it's brought in a lot more light to the situation. But in terms of tangible progress for the African Americans, I don't know, man. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't. Well, I guess it'll all depend on the election, right? It'll all depend on what the outcome of this election is going to be.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm skeptical either way. I don't think. I mean, given it's not like the Democrats haven't been in power before, and the situation hasn't necessarily improved.
You're completely right.
African Americans in the United States. So I don't think Biden winning the election and Kamala Harris.
He's going to forget it in 15 minutes anyway.
I think with Harris on board, she'll just lock everyone up.
True. Well, that's the thing. Good thing that you pointed out.
Lock him up.
Simon, Black Lives Matter, it started under Obama, right?
Yeah.
And there wasn't any change, under that either. So you're right. So necessarily that it doesn't kind of mean there's going to be any change. And I don't know, with all the stuff that's happening in the US, Kenosha withstanding, right? There hasn't really been much changes because I don't know, because the officer, because at the moment we're currently waiting for the trial of I forget the actual Chauvin, the guy who so we're currently waiting for that trial at the moment, and now with Kenosha it's like we're waiting for the conclusion of what's happening with that trial. I don't know if they've released the name of the guy who shot Blake.
In the back?
The officer. I don't know if the officer's name, but because more and more information is coming out around the circumstances of that shooting too. So it's all a waiting game at the moment.
That's right.
It's funny. I speak from personal experience when it comes to this. I've lived in both countries, Australia and the US, and there is definitely a sense of fear that you have for the police being over there. And Sam, you've been there as well, right? I mean, you went to Atlanta. I don't know if you had any face-to-face interaction with a police officer there. They are very.
Fortunately, I did not.
Oh well, fortunate for you, but it's very intimidating. They hold. They hold a lot more power, and they're a lot less compassionate than an average Australian police officer would be. And
I get along with. Are really approachable, right? They're
exactly.
G'day, mate. How's it going?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm all right, mate.
They actually check up on you and stuff. It's like the one time that I have had a run-in with police, I got pulled over, and they were actually so nice to me. Like, I was thanking them and everything. They gave me a fine. They took 3 demerit points, and I was thanking them. Like, they're actually so nice.
You thank them for taking 3 demerit points.
For taking my money and my demerit. Like, I was thanking them because they could have been rude about it. Like if it was in the US, they'd probably have me on the.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know we've laughed about this, but if you're an African American and in the United States and you were pulled over, by an officer, I don't think the reaction would be,
one of
that way, right?
I mean, like, people have been.
You'd be fearing for your life. You'd be
in their car.
That's
what
was that
thing. People get killed for having their music too loud in their car, like African Americans driving. When they get pulled over, the music's too loud, and that's a stereotype there. So that's why, when there's police, they turn their music down and everything because it's happened in the past.
I just want to say one thing. Let's not forget that Philando Castile was a card-carrying NRA member, and he did have a weapon on him, and he did mention it to the officer, and he still got killed.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yes, we are talking about Black Lives Matter, and I wanted to talk about this to draw a distinction between the various protests and riots and groups that we're kind of seeing in the United States. And so there's people, I think, who are out on the street who are protesting under the Black Lives Matter phrase, that they support the phrase, that they're allies of black people, Black Americans. And not just Black Americans, but that movement is now in the the UK and in Australia with our own issues.
Just to pause it for 1 second, someone in the chat asked, "Are Australian police racist?" I think we should come back to that later. We should shelve that because I think that's a good. I think that's a good topic. But continue.
That so there's Black Lives Matter. There's people protesting under the umbrella or under the phrase Black Lives Matter, and they're none the wiser of the organization, the political movement that is Black Lives Matter, hashtag Black Lives Matter, or the organization that is Black Lives Matter. And so I think we want to draw a distinction between protesters who ally with African Americans, Black people, and the constant threat that in which they live under, and those who are directly affiliated with the organization Black Lives Matter. I think it's 2 different things, and it's easy to conflate. And
here's the thing: they're 2 different things, but to people who support Black Lives Matter, they're usually the same thing. And it's hard to decouple both, even though there is a distinction. I think the vast majority of people, when they say Black Lives Matter, they refer to the statement and not the movement. But the problem is that the movement and the statement are the one, right? Because as you said, hashtag Black Lives Matter. But a lot of it is a good idea to decouple, because I definitely don't support the the political movement. The statement, I think everybody can get behind.
And I think if most people probably don't have the time to kind of do that research and kind of understand what the organization Black Lives Matter, what their manifesto is, what their their stated objectives are, but they support the phrase, and they want to ally with Black people. And And I think most people probably fall in that category of protesters. And I want to distinguish those protesters from the rioters, because, yeah, certainly there's going to be people part of the Black Lives Matter organization or protesting under the umbrella Black Lives Matter who are rioting on the streets and tearing down property, which I think all of us, we can agree that that's not the right way to try and institute change.
Generally destroying innocent people's livelihoods is not a great way to get them on your side. No.
Yeah, and I can kind of understand maybe the sentiment, what they're kind of they're overweighting. People are overweighting. Sorry, go ahead.
The way I look at it is there's three sort of groups of people who are out there right now for the BLM movement or the statement. And one of them is obviously activists who are trying to actively go out there and change things by, being at these protests. And then you got protesters who are allies, so they support the movement, therefore they're there. And then, for lack of a better word, I can't think of a word that's better, but for now we'll call them rioters, who are there to take advantage of the situation that's going on. So I'll split it up into those three sort of categories.
Well, I want to just ask, what are the motivations of the rioters then?
Get the cash, man. Just use that
that money.
I completely disagree on that.
Yeah. I was going to say, do you not think that there are rioters who have political goals and are using activists?
Oh, that's definitely
they have.
Yeah, well, then
different types of rioters.
They could overlap between the two categories, but like, to make things simpler, I would say you can split it up into three, because I feel like there's more people who are in a group that are actually going out there and causing problems because it's cool now, or like because they're trying to as it say, like rob things or whatever, versus activists who are actually trying to do something.
1,500 properties in Minneapolis and St. Louis were destroyed and caused about like $500 million worth of damages. Like these aren't just like small amounts of contingent of people who are causing these problems in these protests. So yeah, like there may be a distinction, but
the protest thing.
I think the framing of peaceful protests is something that's an incorrect thing that's being done online in social media and in news articles when it comes to the framing of what's going on in America, especially in Kenosha.
I was going to say one thing. I think, just going back to what you were saying, Tab. Just go back to what you were saying. It's the sentiment, right? I think people are getting tired of being treated this way. African American people are getting tired of being treated this way, and
many white people are tired of seeing African Americans being treated this way.
Absolutely, but just going and just going back to the riots or the rioters, I think that is just rage spilling over, right? I mean, you'll notice that this protest started during the day. Would have started in the afternoon or something like that, and then the curfew would have come in, and the ones that hung around at the end, they're the ones who were looting and burning. But I don't think that it was politically driven or they were trying to take advantage of a situation. I just think that people are really pissed off right now, and to an extent where we are more concerned about property than we are over lives. We're talking about rioters, and we're not talking about police officers who are killing Black people.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think the whole George Floyd protests that are happening like around America and around the world too show that it is something that's actually in the political zeitgeist and social zeitgeist at the moment. I think the problem when people talk about property is that if it were like, there's a lot of, like, for example, like statues that are being torn down and people are like, hey, you know what, that dude probably wasn't a good guy. I can kind of get behind tearing down a statue of some slaver, right? But when it's like some mom and pop store, as I said, there's 1,500 buildings were damaged / lit on fire in Minneapolis alone, right? Some of those are going to be minority-owned businesses too. It's not just going to be just white people who are affected by that.
You did have a movement of actual people like gang members and that standing outside black-owned businesses, letting them know, like, don't destroy this business. It's a black-owned business.
So should they only destroy non-black-owned businesses then?
I mean, I'm just saying that's what was happening. But whether I agree with
whether it's right or not,
that's not up to me.
I think I have a slightly different maybe take on this. I think some of the rioting that we're seeing is probably strategic, because there's a stated goal that they want to achieve, and I think if you look at certainly I think some of it may be opportunistic. There's people are rioting, maybe I can get some Gucci, but a lot of the riots that are starting is and Sami touched on this. There's a sense of frustration that things are not going to change, and so let's just tear it all down. And then there's other groups who are like, well, you know what? If the police are going to wanton kill people, and if they can act above the law when they're meant to be enforcing the law, then maybe we can act above the law and we can show everyone else what it looks like when the whole thing goes to shit because no one follows the law. So if the officers will not obey the law and act like they're above the law, and if civilians were to do the same thing, this is what society looks like. This is a glimpse of what society looks like. And that strategy is, I'm not saying it's going to, I don't think it necessarily will fail. I think we've seen that work before in the past. I don't agree with it, but, I think after MLK was assassinated, there was widespread rioting in the United States.
Rodney King.
Yeah, the Rodney King. The LA riots.
There was riots. So it's not to say that rioting doesn't result in, political change, for expediency's sake, if for nothing else. But I to be honest, I don't. That right now the U.S. law, as it stands, protects African Americans as equally as it does everyone else. It's just that some officers
been implemented,
are not think they're above the law, and the system protects them.
But what do you say about the way that Donald Trump has reacted to the riots in Minneapolis, even in Kenosha?
I mean, he's sending out the National Guard.
I mean, just in general,
that's actually not true. He's actually requested that places like Portland take on National Guard, and I think Ted Wheeler, I think he's the mayor of Portland, has rejected his offers to, and Portland has been having riots for over 90 days now.
There was a shooting in Portland yesterday, I think.
Yeah, they shot a Trump supporter, I think, an Antifa member shot and killed a Trump supporter.
He was wearing a Patriot Prayer flag.
Patriot Prayer, correct.
Patriot Prayer, something.
It's Patriot Prayer is another white nationalist group, by the way.
Yeah.
Right.
So they shot and killed him, and I think the shooter has been identified now.
But in general, Trump's opinion, what I'm trying to bring about is, what's his opinion on it, on the whole issue of black inequality, because he keeps saying, "Oh, I'm doing the most for black people." What's he trying
on a good day? I have no idea what Trump is even saying.
Yeah, no, but this is something that he's constantly said. So every time someone brings up an issue, he always just slaps it back, saying, "No, I'm already on top of it. I'm doing the best. More than even Martin Luther King has done."
Yeah, so look at look at the black unemployment rate under the Trump administration. I mean, that's his number one talking point.
Keeping them at home.
I mean, if you look at places like Portland, Chicago, and Wisconsin, which Kenosha's in Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah.
He's offered to give these Democrat-run states National Guard support, and they've all rejected it. So that's going to be ultimately the defense that he plays is, hey, I tried to send them help and they rejected it, and that's what he's going to use as a means to shield criticism.
his means to like help the people is just fighting fire with fire, sending National Guard,
yeah, because more or less every day there is rioting happening in Portland, for example, and the state isn't doing anything to stop these riots.
What's the reason?
Has he actually looked into why
what's the reason?
Yeah, it's like why is there a constant
what are their
riot?
demands?
Yeah.
Well, no, here's the problem, right? So federal authority can't tell the state what to do necessarily when it comes to so it's up to the state legislator to control what's going on. Now he can invoke certain actions that would give him power to just storm in and just like take over if he wanted to, but that's going to be a very bad thing for him to do, because then people are going to scream, fascist, whatever, blah blah blah. Like people are going to then say that. So at the moment, the thing that he's going to do is just wait, because all these protests are just going to get him reelected. That's my prediction right now. Like if they don't stop, like at least in some capacity, have
you just made a election prediction?
I did.
Before our US election,
you might want to walk that back.
No, not necessarily. Okay. But I'm just saying, like, like when we're looking at it, like that's what's going to be a message. They're going to be like, Biden's America is this, right? Like that's what.
Well, I don't see Biden win in the first place.
Well, yeah, no, neither. Okay, neither. Nobody expects Biden to necessarily win, right? Look, it's going to be Hillary from out of nowhere. She's going to pull off the mask. It's Rey Mysterio, right? Like, it's going to be one of those bad boys. Like that's what I want for the election. I want like a surprise candidate, like Kanye decides to run Democrat all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's going to be the defense, because ultimately, he's not going to send in. I think it's the Insurrection Act. I think that's maybe what it's under, but I don't quote me, guys.
And what does Sami think about this? That's what.
Yeah, I actually had a question for Sami.
Go on.
And this is something I've seen online a lot, so I want to get your views on it. What do you think about the term defund the police? What does it mean to you, and do you think it is a good option?
And what do you think what does it mean to the American public? How people see it. Yeah. What is their take from it?
So just the first piece, the whole defund the police. I think Black Lives Matter has always been a grassroots. Well, it started off as a grassroots type of movement.
Yeah.
So I think it was a more visceral reaction to what was happening to them. It definitely doesn't sound right politically, right? I mean, the moment you say defund the police, you start polarizing people on either ends of the spectrum.
And then you get the Blue Lives Matter people. That's how you get
exactly right. Exactly, that's how you get the Blue Lives Matter people. So I think it's. I mean, it's. I don't know what the answer is. Whether it's leadership that needs to sort of contain, sort of help these people grow, and sort of hone in on their message. Do
you agree with the statement though, defund the police? And if not, what does that statement mean to you?
So as an Australian, I totally don't agree on any sort of defunding of any sort of public service. Right. So I definitely don't agree with that statement. So I don't agree with that statement. I think it's the wrong message. I think the message of defunding the police, as I said, is a visceral reaction to what's been happening, and it needs to be manicured into something that is more, more appeases the masses a bit more. I get the point.
Right?
Constructive, right? I get the point of the message. I get why they're reacting this way, just like how I get the looting. But I don't think it's the right message to win an election politically, if that's what they're trying to do, or influence the progressive movement, right? If that's what they're trying to do.
I've seen an alternative as well. Like some people have suggested, not so much defund the police, but
retrain it.
Yeah, not even retrain, but reestablish how the budget is split, because a lot of it does go to the police.
Restructure.
Restructure.
But can that be turned into a nice slogan that you rinse and repeat,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Like,
true.
because this is
Yeah,
because that's
reallocate the budget to other public services from the police. That
Turn
just,
into
it has
an
a ring to
acronym,
it.
like
Yeah.
just turn it into an acronym, mate.
Hug the police.
There was a really good documentary.
For someone that grew up with listening to Ice-T music to now turn around and say hug the police, Sami,
Hug the police.
I'm very surprised.
You've changed, man.
Character
You've changed.
development.
Character development. That's it. I like this arc.
You've 8 years in America has changed you, mate. You're hugging the police now.
There you go.
Sorry, Summer, as you were saying.
Yeah. I think there was a really good. I wouldn't say a documentary. It was part of a, one of those investigations based on these Black Lives Matter and defund the police movements, and it was a former trainer for, I'm not sure what state it was, but it was an American. He was for one of the states. He was one of the trainers, and he was explaining how much power they hold and what kind of vigorous training they go through. But when it comes to de-escalation of whatever the situation is, they don't get to spend a lot of time in learning how to de-escalate. So I think that's a serious issue, right? Like we constantly see during these shootings, or when they kill someone, there's a really obvious common denominator, which is looking at the way that they dealt with the person that was shot was always inadequate, not enough to either calm the person down, because you got to know the people you're dealing with, and you got to know how to deal with them and how to calm them down, how to talk in their language, or in the way that they understand best. So I guess they do know where the problem is, but again, the money is not being funneled into the correct areas. And yeah, what Tax said makes perfect sense as well. You got to reallocate those funds into the right departments. Maybe use some of that to train people on how to deal with these situations better. Because I think we need all countries need an effective police force to enforce certain laws, especially when it comes to these situations. And if we're going to defund the police, who's going to take their place?
Oh, yeah. You're completely correct, right? Like, but the problem also is that some of these people actually don't like the police at all, and they actually literally want to defund the police, which is what's happening in Seattle at the moment.
I think most people, when they
but look at Seattle. They're currently, I think, I think it's Seattle. They've removed or they're going to remove police and going to be implementing a community. I think it's going to be just like a community-based policing, but they're not the police. It's something else, right? It's an experiment, and we'll see how it functions. But there are people who would prefer it that way, like maybe having like a neighborhood watch versus a state-owned, I guess, militia, which is what people can and maybe do see police as, right?
I mean, when you see the shooters walking away from a crime, and the police turning the other way, people do. Is that a sign of brutality? People do take a lot of messages when they see that.
It's
yeah. This isn't the first time, and I'm pretty sure it's happened. It's happened even when who was that guy who shot up the church?
Dylan Roof.
Dylan Roof. Which one? Unfortunately.
I'm pretty sure
Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof. I'm trying to refer to.
They took that guy to Burger King.
Yeah. It's like what's the deal with that? Yeah, what's the deal with that? After killing that many people,
you got the difference where he killed a couple of people. They took him to a rest stop to let him go eat whatever. Then they took him to go eat, and then they processed him. Whereas when it comes to like an African American, their first instinct is get trigger happy, just shoot.
Yeah.
Oh,
he's gonna get in. He's gonna get inside the car and drive away. Oh yeah, we're not gonna be able to catch him because he's driving a spaceship.
I mean, if you're referring to Blake, allegedly they did attempt to arrest him, and they did tase him twice, at least according to.
And then 7 bullets.
And then bullets. Well, when you're resisting arrest,
mate, shoot him in the leg. Shoot him in the leg.
No, okay, so that's incorrect. You can't just shoot people in the leg. They're not trained to shoot people in the leg. You've seen how they have those target dummies or whatever, and they have
the gun range.
The gun range. There's no legs.
Yeah, but then there's also no requirement for 7 bullets. I'm pretty sure one's enough.
Yeah, because by then they made because
excessive force.
If I can just interject here a little bit, I think again, we can't speak on as with a lived experience of African Americans or from the perspective of blacks in the United States. At the same time, we can't speak about the police officers in those general terms. I wanted to make that point because officers, not just in the United States but here, they're trained to shoot at the center of mass, right? And if they draw their weapon, they're trained with the intent to kill at that point, right? Not to disable or to maim or to
hurt them, right?
Hurt them a little bit. It is with the intent to kill. And if you're an American officer, and I'm not making any defense of the U.S. police. I think the system protects them. They can defend themselves. I'm not here to defend them. All I'm saying is the perspective of these officers is every single day they get 9 call-outs to shootings, and every single one of them may end their life, right? And so when that's your experience every single day, that you might be killed any moment, and it's because it's not just traffic stops and parking tickets. They're getting call outs to very dangerous situations where perpetrators are wielding guns, and or
that's what happens when guns are so common in the country.
Well, that's another issue altogether. But where someone goes to their vehicle, defying police orders to stop, and has pulled a weapon on them. And so this is something that they experience every single day. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not surprised that they're not willing to take any chances to protect themselves. I think it's, especially when they're being paid, $60,000, $70,000 a year. I don't think they're going to be saying, oh, maybe he's pulling a piece of paper out, right? I think they shoot first and ask questions later. And I think it's absolutely wrong. But if every single day my job was to experience this, my perspective may be different. And I just wanted to maybe add a bit of color to that, because it's complicated is my point.
Yeah, no, you're completely correct. Oh, sorry, Sami, go.
No, just one thing is, I would agree with you, except for the fact that black people are twice as likely as a white person to get killed. So I think it's also cultural. I think there is definitely, I don't know if the word is racism, but there is definitely profiling that's done by police departments.
Absolutely.
And that has led to where we're at.
And I mentioned this the other day. There's a report released in 2006 by the FBI that showed that police departments in the United States had been infiltrated by white supremacist organizations. And that's just, this is an FBI report in 2006, by the way. So you can look it up, Google it, have a read of the report.
Oh, I'd like to read that.
And so this is, it's not I'm not surprised that 14 years on from that, we're seeing what we're seeing. Some of it is a lack of training, absolutely. Some of it is that a lot of the police budget goes towards militarization, because the US has just spent $10 trillion on the war on terror, and they've got all this machinery now that they have no use for. So they've brought them back from Afghanistan and Iraq and other places that they've been in war, and they're selling them to police departments all over the United States, right? And so the military, the police departments are becoming more militarized, because there's just surplus military goods available to them at cheap prices. So that, to me, that is a big problem, and I think that's going to result in a lot more deaths of civilians and a lot more of these incidents of like African Americans being killed unjustly.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true.
Back to the point of the racial profiling. It's so easy, for even you go retail shops, right? there was, I think, a survey that was said that there's specific retail chains that actually had like a specific call out for like African Americans, right? Like just in case they were stealing or something. I'll try and look for the report and I'll try and link it for everyone here. But a lot of places.
What happened?
So a lot of places have like a code word for when, it wasn't necessarily for African Americans, but for like shoplifting.
Mm-hmm.
But then like most of the call outs were like they were racial profiling. And so if you can
so
see
they were false.
False flags.
Yeah, falsely.
Yeah.
So when you got that happening in retail departments, retail stores, you can only imagine what happens in like a police force, where you're in an actual position of power.
Well, I mean, I think like in some stores in America, they put I think they put locks on like African American products. Now, initially, people were saying like, "Oh, that's like that's racist. Why are you putting it on?" But a lot of these like retail stores, the reason why they put security on certain products because they get stolen. So it's like it is literally one of those like chicken and an egg things. As well, what are the retail shops supposed to do in order to prevent theft in their stores, right? So, I mean. It's one of those things that one begets the other, and vice versa. I don't like the racial profiling, but like what are retail stores supposed to do in a situation like that?
Yeah, definitely.
I want to come back to the question we had from our viewer around: is police in Australia racist? Do we want to?
Apparently, the chat get offended if you don't mention their name. So it's MS Chaudhry.
Oh, is it? MS Chaudhry.
He was the one that posed the question. So,
okay.
Yeah. Who
wants to start? Like, who's had some run-ins with the police? And did you find that?
I've already told you my run-in.
I mean, I've had general run-ins with police, not like they're asking what I'm doing, but.
Please elaborate on these general run-ins with the police.
Oh, like I'd be somewhere and there's like police presence in some capacity, and generally like I haven't had problems with police, but personally.
But then you also see a lot of reports come out about how police treat the indigenous people. And
that's
like
very.
I think. I don't know. Like
I've actually spoken to indigenous people, and they've all had so many different accounts on how many times their family members were, mistreated. So I wouldn't be someone again, unless unless you've lived it. It's best not to just write it off because we don't know the whole story.
I think we should believe them when they say something is happening. And so if you look at the Aboriginal community, particularly in Queensland, and the number of deaths in custody that's occurred, and so Adam, I see there's an interesting reaction, but
sorry, I'm laughing at the chat. Sultan said that the police ran after him once, and they said that it was a crime to look this beautiful. Damn, like.
But this is it's serious. But I'm sorry for kind of giggling a bit, but I'm giggling at the chat and not.
Yeah. That's the one thing I hate.
I don't think we can make a blanket statement about police officers in Australia. Like there
are definitely racist.
All of my
cops.
experience with them has been positive. I've not had any police officer ever in any encounters being where I felt that they were racially profiling me or targeting me, but I think when we should believe people in the Sudanese community in Victoria when they say that they are being harassed. I think we should believe them. I think when Indigenous communities in Australia say they're being harassed and their children are being harassed and the sheer number of deaths in custody, I think we should take that seriously.
And also
a question. Oh, sorry. Go on, someone.
No. You go first. I'll give you like
No,
something
you
that
go first.
No, you go first.
I'll just go first. So a question I have for people in the chat and for you guys as well, is do you think what's happening in America, like the tension between police and the public, do you think some of that is spilling over or might spill over to Australia as well? I mean, an account of that is you saw how heightened people were during.
Can you be specific?
An example of that is how they had to lock down all those houses, the housing commissions, the flats in which suburb?
With Flemington.
Flemington, yeah. So how they had to lock all the people up there, and it was like
short notice. People didn't get
everything. Yeah, and
also how badly they were managed.
A lot of people were angry at Australian police, and I felt like, some people were right to feel that way, of course, like given their reasoning. I don't know the full reasoning, so I'm not going to say. But do you feel like some of those sentiments were also because BLM movements and the riots, especially the George Floyd riots, were happening at the same time? Do you think that heightened some of people's hatred or anger towards Australian police as well?
Probably didn't help.
Probably
didn't help. I tell you what,
it is contagious, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, for example, like with all the George Floyd protests happening in America, that spilled over here too, right?
And we had a massive one.
And to the UK and to Canada
and across the world.
And so subsequently, like people did use the protests here to highlight racial injustices in Australia too. Like it's one of those things like, hey, we're talking about it, might as well bring up, hey, did you know about these people who died in police custody? Like you might as well. It's like you have the opportunity to do so, right?
I'm pretty sure it started because people were saying, oh, at least Australian police aren't that bad, and then people like, oh well, they've been doing this and this.
It gave awareness of the issue, right?
Yeah.
But in addition to that, just going back to your point, do you think it also brought in animosity towards police in Australia because of what's been happening, the general highlighting of the injustices that are happening around the world? Do you think, people are now pissed off towards the police officers because they think that, they're just bad in general?
I'm pissed off at police every time they arrest someone for like COVID-19, and there's like 100 of them zoning in on one person. It seems like a really big waste of like state resources. But other than that, like I haven't seen much kind of like mainstream like I guess hate towards police here in Australia for the most part.
There isn't.
Doesn't necessarily mean
there was what happened in Broadmeadows. I see that as hatred towards police and the government.
The anti-lockdown protesters.
All 20 of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, now that they're actually cracking down and preventing people from having protests, like, it took them a while, but at least they eventually stopped them from doing protests here in Australia. But that's just my perspective on protests during coronavirus.
I think that's the thing, right? The difference between Australia and the US. I think generally we are law-abiding citizens because we do trust the authorities, whereas in the US, it's always been, I think, since its birth, being a rebel to the authority or the freedom.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, so there is a latent kind of distrust, I guess, of authority figures in America.
I mean,
they fled from the UK.
You have the F the police kind of sentiments for a reason in the US, and that's where it started, So
you're talking about the hug the police movement that Sami is starting?
I would say
HTP, really?
I'd say it's a bit more than hugging, but okay.
I just want to go back to the question that was mentioned in the chat about, are the Australian police racist? There was something that happened last year in Western Sydney in April. I'm not sure if you saw it. I'm not sure if
what happened.
So it was two police officers who pulled over this Afghan girl who was I think she was a refugee, and she was in the car with her mother. And it's absolutely shocking the kind of comments and the lewd comments that he was making, to the point where he asked the mother, who couldn't speak English, to produce the documentation of her her being in Australia on legal terms. So he expected her to be carrying her her passport with an approved visa, and he was even threatening to put them in the car and take him to the police station for accessory to murder because they weren't wearing their their seatbelts or speeding, one of the two. It was absolutely ridiculous, and there's an entire video because it was captured on his body cam, and it took a commission to recognize that he was engaged in misconduct. So I think, I'm pretty sure so, but again, that was because she complained. She made a formal complaint. Imagine if there's someone who's unable to make that complaint, what happens to those police officers? And again, that's where you hear a lot of accounts that go unaccounted for because no one comes forward or takes it up. And it shouldn't take a commission to realize that it was a misconduct. I think you watch it for 1 minute and you realize that is misconduct. And
there has to unfortunately be a procedure to make sure happen. Like,
of course, but what the point that I'm trying to make is it took a complaint from a refugee. And
was it a royal commission? Did you say? Well, what kind of commission was this?
Yeah, I'd like to know. Yeah, because the royal commission.
That was a law. No, it was a law enforcement
commission. Okay.
Commission. Yeah.
Okay. Well.
LECC. And then of course, it was because she wasn't one of the. I think the mother wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and that's why they got pulled over, and it turned into such a big fuss. And they were. I think they were just about. They were within that. I think they were just driving around the block. So they were pretty close to the house, and the way that I think I'll link it in the chat, and you can watch it for yourself and decide what you think about it, because I think there are a lot of cases where police officers feel the high of being in power when they're technically public servants, right? You can put it in any other way.
I mean, you had the whole Stanford prison experiment for a reason.
Yeah, jobs with that give people power tends to attract certain kinds of personalities. Unfortunately,
definitely.
It's kind of like how the leaders that we actually need to run the world aren't usually the ones that are running them. It's one of those kind of unfortunate things. We want police who are basically the personality of Superman, but unfortunately we get him more like Batman sometimes, right?
Batman.
We like Batman.
We get it. You probably shill. Drawing close to the time to end our podcast. Yep. But before I do, Tak, you mentioned about the severe lockdown conditions of the council housing due to COVID-19, and I think we can all agree that lockdown is necessary, but I think that level of lockdown that they were put under, and the logistical challenge that would have been, and that was rushed, which meant that many people felt or were with lack of food, a lack of baby
rotten
formula,
food.
rotten food. People.
There's definitely a lot of mishandling,
and
the people
point I want to raise about,
by the way.
And the point I want to raise about this one is that if there was an outbreak of that severity in Brighton, right, or in Blackrock, or in Toorak, would the Victorian government have locked it down to that level of to the way that they did with the housing commissions? I mean, obviously, it's not a direct apples to apples comparison. One, you've got a high density housing versus kind of people living in mansions. But
wasn't this before we had major outbreaks of coronavirus also?
Yeah, this was.
Yeah, so it was prior, right?
It was prior to the major, the massive second wave.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. Yeah.
And so I think I felt that was very heavy-handed, and that would have not have happened to a neighbourhood with a cluster in Brighton or in Toorak, right?
Yeah.
There would be definitely better handling of it. I think the point is that people, obviously everyone knows that there was major mishandling in the way the whole Flemington housing commissions were dealt with. Do you think it was a miscarriage in, I guess, not justice, but in how they treated some of these people?
Oh, absolutely. They rushed through a lockdown because they felt it was necessary without thinking through the logistical challenges and understanding the different communities of people that live in those housing commissions and how it would impact their lives. And they I think if it was most other neighborhoods, they would have put a lot more thought into how they implemented this lockdown, so that they didn't inconvenience people or put them under unnecessary stress and harm.
I mean, you mentioned how the numbers in Victoria. This happened before. How the numbers in Victoria rose in general. But then when we did start reaching towards that point, like, it wasn't immediately locked down all of Victoria, right? I think the harsher restrictions came to Craigieburn, the north side, those kind of areas, and like the actual areas that were affected. And even the way they handled that, it wasn't straight away, we're locking down Broadmeadows, we're locking down Craigieburn. It kind of happened slowly, right? They gave them time to prepare for it. Like, by next week, these restrictions are going to be in place for these suburbs, right?
Rather than from 6 p.m. tonight, the council housing is all going to be locked down, and there's going to be 1,000 police officers. It's just ridiculous.
Were there active cases though at that time?
Not to the extent that we were having.
There was a cluster, from what I know.
In the tower, the towers, were there active cases?
In the tower, I think there were.
There were active cases.
There was at least 70. Correct. There could have been closer to 90 by the time that they finished.
And I think that's probably the reason why they did it. Personally, the way I see it was they were like, let's try and control this tower. And unfortunately, like with a lot of the things that have been happening around the world when it comes to coronavirus containment measures, they didn't do a good job, right? And like Tak said, they subsequently started locking down certain suburbs. And there were only postcodes. Postcodes, sorry. Yeah. And then they were just like, you know what? We're just locking down everyone. Right? Because by the time it was too late, because they couldn't control it. And I think that this seems more in line with desperation and poor planning rather than targeting.
I don't think they targeted. I think. I think they looked at the community and said, well, we're not going to. We don't need to spend as much resources and time and effort planning this properly. But they didn't really plan the carte blanche kind of lockdown either, right? Like, because we went into like, how many stages? What lockdown are we on now? I forget. Is it 5? It's 5.
4, yeah.
Well, when will I be locked down to specifically my closet? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, it's gonna lock us in one room and that's it.
One room. I have to wear a hazmat suit. When's that happening? I'm waiting for it, mate.
But
actually, what's the situation? Sorry, just as a side note, what's the situation with the whole state of emergency, state of disaster?
It got extended. I know Dan Andrews has extended state of emergency for an extra 6 months. That doesn't mean we're extending lockdown for that long. It depends on the numbers and whatnot. But a lot of people are saying it
just makes it easier for the chief health officer.
To implement lockdowns and to implement.
Yeah, because they can only give what is it? The I think you recommendation.
Yeah.
Right?
Prediction. I'm going to make a prediction. I think they'll extend stage 4 lockdown for another couple of weeks.
Legally, I read somewhere legally they can't extend stage 4 lockdown more than 6 weeks, but that's to say maybe 2 weeks we might have, stage 3 and then go back into stage 4 like two weeks after that.
I see. Right, it's the whole go down one level.
Don't worry, we're not going to keep you here for 6 weeks. We'll at least give you 2 weeks of freedom.
We'll give you 2 weeks off.
Do you think people will comply?
Not if you give them stage 3 and you take away from them.
It's so with stage 3, are curfews in effect?
No.
Okay. So I think numbers are going to rise. That's my prediction. I think curfews have done a good job at curtailing a lot of the and
the nighttime shenanigans that people get up to.
Yeah, nighttime shenanigans. Yes.
Just before we go away, Hibak in the chat says she feels that it was definitely targeted.
Is this in response to
the housing lockdown?
Housing lockdown.
Because I've spoken to a lot of my Somali, classmates, and they all feel because they have family who was living in that, and they do have that feeling, for whatever, they, of course, they know better, but they do feel that they were targeted, especially with the way that they were treated and how difficult it was.
You have people, let's say, like, okay, the government know they probably stuffed up in the way they handled it, whatever, but then you had actual volunteers, people from, the communities.
They were unable to help.
Not only were they unable to help, police were stopping them from helping.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you guys have already messed up this situation. At least let people who understand the language, because a lot of the people in the housing commissions don't even understand what the police were demanding from them or why they were even locked up in the first place. So, you have representatives of those communities going in
even with
explaining the situation to them. Yeah, even with supplies. And then they, like, police weren't even letting them. I've seen videos of people get arrested trying to help them.
See, that sounds like a logistic problem rather than a problem of, well, the police don't want these people specifically to prevent people in the towers from getting access to food, right? That's how
they made them feel. I think that's
sure. But realistically, it's going to be police are given orders, right? And police have to follow it. It's like, don't let people come in. And they're just going to be like, yep, we're not going to let these people in, and we have to arrest them because that's
the
our
Victorian
orders,
government
right?
made a big, they just made a big mistake.
So I don't blame the police necessarily on that.
I don't think it's
and I think that needs to be the distinction here.
I think the Victorian government, like other things, rushed it, and they felt that, well, it's just a bunch of people in housing commissions, so do we, how much time and attention and do we need to really think before we solve this problem? So let's solve it later, let's just lock them down now. When I think other areas they would have said, let's solve understand the issues, speak to that community, see what best way to lock this situation down, and then implemented the lockdowns. I think it would have.
I was reading something like people who lived in that area, in that suburb, I think not too far from those housing blocks that got locked down. There were people like going for brunch, morning runs, doing what people do normally, but these people are still locked up. You can't help but feel like there was a sense of injustice there.
Look, never trust someone with two first names like Dan Andrews. Just saying.
So, question: will we ever find out? Will there be any sort of freedom of release of papers or anything like that in the future?
Look, I think if there's enough community pressure, there could be an investigation into the lack of planning in the lockdown. As a royal
commission.
But
just in general.
Yeah, that's interesting point though. I don't think we would learn anything. We don't really
potentially know. I think maybe if the Liberal government take over, like in Victoria, like maybe because then that's a political point that hey, look, Daniel Andrews, he did this, and now we can use it as a point of contention to stay in power.
I don't think they even need to. I think he's gone politically.
You reckon?
He's out. Like he's.
I mean, people are making a point that he's trying to keep his power by forcing all these state of emergencies to last longer. I don't know if that's correct though, but
that's the question. I mean, that's why I asked the question of, do you think people will comply? I think, these sentiments will start coming out. These feelings towards authoritarianism will start coming out, right?
Yeah. I think if they keep the curfew thing in, I think
any longer.
I think if they do the curfew thing, because here's the thing, right? Because we have because under stage 3 or whatever, you were still allowed to have 3 other people or something visit, right? Is it 2? I don't know. I don't remember everything, right? Now, potentially at least that allows people to still be social in some capacity. It's just like you just got to fuck off after 5 o'clock or whatever it may.
Hey, we don't. Anyway.
Whatever.
It's the end of the show. So
end of we got to cancel. But no. But I was just saying, if it's after, if we have some kind of restriction on what is it, curfew period, but we still allow people pre-curfew to still interact in some capacity, that would probably alleviate a lot of people's problems when it comes to socialization.
I mean, I think this Sunday, Dan Andrews is going to have a talk about a road map, or I can't
Ding up the
remember.
reopening the economy, roadmap to reopening the economy.
Like a plan on how we're gonna reopen the economy and how we're gonna go.
This Sunday, is it?
Yeah, this Sunday.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see. I feel like it'll be like a hybrid of certain bits and pieces that worked from each stage of the lockdown, and see how that works. I think at this point,
they're going to lock down poor neighborhoods and open up the rich ones.
Yeah, I think he's just freestyling at this point. That's my.
He's just MacGyvering it, is he?
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, curfew worked. We'll put that with 5 people. Let's see how that works.
So I've been out of the country. When's the next state election?
Mate, we're in the country and we don't know.
Welcome to Australians, right? Like, when are we voting?
Have we just had one, or has it been like?
Mentally, I'm out of the
secret.
I'm
going to share a secret.
You don't vote.
In state elections, sometimes I feel like not state elections, council elections. Sometimes I rather pay the fine than actually submit the ballot.
Oh, we get it.
And my wife, who's probably listening right now, will agree that she's been paying those fines.
At least you're paying the fine, so that's good.
Well, no, I wouldn't. She insists that.
Okay.
Fair enough.
There you go.
But and I think that's probably all we have time for on the show today. Where we've exceeded our 2 hour. The 2 hour mark on
but it's all Sammy's fault.
You bring Sami on, it's just been talking non-stop. And
hey, can I just say shout out to my daughter Yara?
Yeah,
I was on a podcast.
Shout out to your daughter.
Shout out to Yara. But if you like what you heard on the podcast today, please subscribe, and we'll see you again next week, same time.
We also have Fridays. So check us out.
If you're interested in football or soccer,
football. We'll be talking about Chadwick Boseman as well.
Yes. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Potentially some OnlyFans stuff. Because there's some hilarious stuff going on in that area.
And you guys have suggested us talk about OnlyFans. It'll be fun.
There we go. Yep, we're listening.
Point of contention is Messi's transfer. Is he going to leave? Is he staying? It'll be interesting. We're going to have a guest speaker. Well, I still have to talk to that person about it. But if Samir Kandaka is down, he'll join us because he knows a lot about football. He kind of has no choice but to join now because I called him out live.
Called him out live.
Yeah.
So yes,
Samir,
check us out.
I know you're watching this. Guys. You're joining us on Friday.
Let us know. We'll have a poll. We'll have a poll on our Instagram page. So make sure you check it out. Definitely. Make sure you like and subscribe. Drop your comments below.
Let us know what matters are on your mind.
And once again, thank you, Sami, for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks for joining us, man.
It's awesome.
Good having you.